Direct and indirect questions in English from espressoenglish.net. Direct questions are the normal questions we ask to friends, family, and people we know well. For example, where's the bathroom? Indirect questions are more formal and polite. We use indirect questions when talking to a person we don't know well, or in more professional situations. For example, could you tell me where the bathroom is? Here are some phrases to use for beginning an indirect question. Could you tell me? Do you know? I was wondering. Do you have any idea? I'd like to know. Would it be possible? Is there any chance? Now, the structure of the question changes in indirect questions. Let's look at some examples. Direct. Where is Market Street? Indirect. Could you tell me where Market Street is? In indirect questions, forms of the verb to be, like is, are, and were, come after the subject, not before the subject. Direct. What time does the bank open? Indirect. Do you know what time the bank opens? In indirect questions, we don't use auxiliary verbs like do, does, or did. Also, in the indirect question, we say the bank opens. Direct. Why did you move to Europe? Indirect. I was wondering why you moved to Europe. Again, there's no auxiliary verb did in the indirect question. As a result, we say moved instead of move. Direct. How has he managed to get in shape so quickly? Indirect. Do you have any idea how he has managed to get in shape so quickly? The verbs have, has, and had also come after the subject in indirect questions. Direct. How much does this motorcycle cost? Indirect. I'd like to know how much this motorcycle costs. To form the indirect question, we eliminate the auxiliary verb does and change cost to costs. Direct. Can you finish the project by tomorrow? Indirect. Would it be possible for you to finish the project by tomorrow? For questions with the word can, we use would it be possible in the indirect question. Also, we say to finish instead of finish. Direct. Can we change the meeting to Thursday? Indirect. Is there any chance we could change the meeting to Thursday? Is there any chance is another way to ask an indirect question when the direct question begins with can. We also use the word could before change in the indirect question. Yes and no questions in direct form have the word if in the indirect question. For example, direct. Does Tom like Italian food? Indirect. Do you know if Tom likes Italian food? Direct. Are your parents joining us for dinner? Indirect. Could you tell me if your parents are joining us for dinner? Direct. Do they speak English? Indirect. I was wondering if they speak English. Direct. Has Barbara ever studied abroad? Indirect. Do you have any idea if Barbara has ever studied abroad? Direct. Do you plan on traveling this summer? Indirect. I'd like to know if you plan on traveling this summer. Okay, let's review the rules for indirect questions. Indirect questions have no auxiliary verbs like do, does, or did. In indirect questions, forms of the verbs be and have come after the subject. For questions beginning with the word can, we change it to would it be possible or is there any chance in the indirect question. And yes or no questions become if in the indirect question. For more practical speaking and writing tips for business and professional English,